So all of you guys bank with ABSA, right? No, you don't. So you guys didn't suffer earlier on this year when this inception of an event was created. Discam? No one. Are you at Discam? So they did the things just a few weeks ago. So nobody started sending you threats on some, I'm gonna leak this. Okay, cool. Perfect. Yeah, I know me, I'm here, but also here, but I don't know anything about this. Like I told you, me, it's what is it, Trojan horse, malware, Tupperware. That's all I know. I don't know about this. This ransomware sounds like some cyber mafia. I want a ransom for this Tupperware. It is, ne? Whose idea was to say ransomware? I thought it was some sort of virus ransomware. Is it? It's not. It's a word for people extorting you for data. Exactly. Ransomware mitigation. There's some serious mitigation. I'm sure you know a lot about that, huh? How's a smart house? They haven't tried to hack you. You can, and put it in the water. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna ignore you all, by the way. I need to make that disclaimer right now. I will ignore everyone's faces. Just don't mind me, ne? I've been told to look at the camera because there are other people that are joining us on virtual. I don't know if they're trying to say they are more important than you, but I'm just saying I've been given a job to do, which is to ignore. I think that's great because at least the nerves, you have to concentrate on the house at large and then look at someone that you don't know. You don't even know what they're doing. Maybe they're in a shed and, So I even have notes. I can't even look at those. I don't know what they did to me, but they say just look there. So with that pressure, I'm going to extend it to you guys as well. Don't look at the audience. Look at the Tupperwares. Tell me when you're about to go live. Tell me when you're about to go. Just give me a heads up. And this, I'll get one more water. A very good morning to you all. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for taking time out to join us here this morning for this exciting event right here at the Dubai Trade Port Corporation. Now, my name is Lunik Sitole, and I'll be your MC for today. We are living in very exciting times whereby we are all just here, or we are here. But that means the world is now moving at a fourth industrial revolution space, which I always think is actually the fifth, because a lot of people are really just online and on here. But that has its own problems. We are also facing a very dark time in terms of that opportunity that's been opened by the space that we're in, whereby criminals are trying to take over slowly but surely. It seems as if the continued moves to a digital space is creating a lot of problems and opportunities for these guys to try and find a way to hack us, giving us threats and making a lot of crazy demands. That's the reality that we are faced with today. Now, this also needs our keen and constant attention. That is why we have decided to host this event for cybersecurity and ransomware mitigation. And of course, we'll be having a few discussions with the industry's best experts. Now, before further going into anything, allow me to just take a moment and introduce what the program will be lined up like for today. Now, we have 5 people that we are going to be hearing from, which are the industry experts. We have Bryn Gerson and Steve Johnson, who are both from the Dubai Trade Port Corporation. Now, they'll be telling us about the Dubai iConnect services. And of course, I want to hear what they have to say about the impact of cybercrime and of course, cybersecurity and its importance. We also have Ian Albrecht, who's from VM Africa. He's going to be talking. He's going to be talking about cybersecurity, and of course, is just going to be laying down some updates on ransomware. We're also going to have the lady by the name of Mary Ann Govender, who's going to tell us more about her IT company, which is Honeycomb Architect Solutions. And lastly, but not least, we have Siabonga Makubu. He's from Olex Technologies, and he's going to be going punch for punch, telling us about the new audit trends. After that, I will then bring the team for a little panel discussion where you, as the person joining us virtually or here at Dubai Trade Ports, can ask questions at the panel who are very keen to answer all your IT related questions. After that, we are going to have a networking session and probably a snack lunch. Now, I don't know what a snack lunch is. Are we lunching or are we snacking? But I know that virtually you might not be there. So we'll just do an e-wallet nyana or something like that. Either way, it's going to be fun, so stay tuned. Now, just to get through some few points that I want to get out the way, some silent facts about Dubai Trade Port Corporation. This is what they've set out to do. They've set up to enable the development of an aerotropolis, attract and sustain investment, and also grow business and trade. Now, the organization's Dubai iConnect platform is the precinct's dedicated information technology and telecommunications provider. It is geared up to provide infrastructure as a service, inclusive of original disaster and recovery. Actually, their capacity provides 24/7, 365 days on the site's on-site support team, ensuring 99.99% uptime. Basically, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm trying to say is Dubai iConnect, we have a world-class telecommunications, voice, and of course, broadband and ICT platform. Against this background, and without further ado, I want to get the ball rolling. There's games here to be played, and I've got experts who would like to game with you. We want to get the cyber-related presentations on the way. And firstly, I would like to introduce Bryn Gerson, who is the senior manager for Dubai iConnect, and of course, Steve Johnson, who is the commercial manager. And like I said earlier on, they'll tell us more about Dubai iConnect. And of course, I really want to hear their insights when it comes to the cybercrime, its impact, and of course, the importance of cybersecurity. Steve Ovo, Bryn, let me hear you guys. Let's give them a round of applause.
Morning, everyone. My name's not Steve. It's Bryn. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a services overview on Dubai iConnect, and then I'm going to hand you over to Steve on more on the cyber crimes that have been going on lately in South Africa. So the services overview in terms of what services we offer in Dubai iConnect, and I don't know if we're projecting, but I would imagine that those of you that are sitting over here can't see. Right, so Dubai iConnect has got a high-speed Metro Ethernet network. We're fully ICASA licensed, i.e. CNS and i.e. CS, which is the 2 licenses that ICASA offers for services in the network space, which means that we're able to run our own fiber network and we're able to transit services over it and able to, which means that we can provide broadband and IT services over that. We run our own fiber network on the precinct and services across outside of the precinct as well. We provide a secure cloud hosting environment on site with 2 data centers across on the precinct, one of them in this building and one in a building on the other side of the precinct. We provide infrastructure as a service, and I'm not supposed to be looking at everyone, I'm terrible with that. We provide infrastructure as a service, as well as white space, which means that you can host your own hardware on the precinct within our data centers. We also have dedicated UPSs and generators, and we also do the 24/7, 365 with a 99.99% uptime. We do have voice and hardware rentals and wireless on-site services. So in other words, if we have for our tenants on-site, we lease hardware for their services. So that means that we don't require people to bring their own hardware if they're on-site. We can lease the hardware for them. Now, I want to give you a little bit of insight into what the 4th Industrial Revolution means. And I'm not going to speak to the presentation now. You know, people tend to say the 4th Industrial Revolution is coming. It is coming. It's coming to Africa. It is here. And this is something that I have a problem with people saying it is coming. It is here. It's very much here. My family is an IT-based family, and I live in a smart home. To the point that my now 22-year-old son, who's just graduated from varsity in accounting, actually configures our light switches for our home. My home has got a mishmash of security cameras and a mishmash of light switches, and it runs off Alexa, and it runs off an app on my cell phone. I can talk to people through the security cameras from my cell phone. I can see everything that is happening in my home from my cell phone. I can open and close the gates from my cell phone. I can change the color of the LED lights in my house from my cell phone. I can switch lights on and off from my cell phone. I can also do all of those things walking around the house by telling Alexa to do it. Okay? It is here. The 4th Industrial Revolution is here. It is also not expensive, except for Alexa, but you don't have to do it with Alexa. The app on my cell phone is free. The light switches are 50 Rand more than a normal light switch. Okay? So it is not expensive. These things are here. Unfortunately, what it means is that my house is open to cybercrime. It is hackable. So the fact that I can do those things from my cell phone, it means that if somebody can get through the security of my home, they can do those things. The fact that I can talk to people in my home means if somebody can get through the security of my home, they can listen to things in my home. So it's not just Facebook listening and Alexa listening. And when you say, I want to listen, oh, I never heard this story, and suddenly it pops up on YouTube, recommenders stories. And, you know, sometimes my printer accidentally orders cartridges from Amazon. You know, these things are here and they're here in Africa. But we also need to be starting to think about the security that those things, you know, the security implications of those things being here. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Steve to take you through what cybercrime actually means and the things that we have actually had happen in South Africa. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. I'm going to take you through a couple of things that have actually been happening here. So basically what we have a look at is, if you look for our audience that's here onto the big screen, you'll see a couple of snapshots that I've taken in terms of newspaper headings. These have been in the last 12 weeks. So everything that's been up there has been recent and been put in. So we all know that Cyril Ramaphosa's private data was hacked, and that made the news a couple of weeks ago. We also know that we had an email attack in terms of a company that cost them 100 million. And this was a phishing attack. And by that, somebody sent an email as a phishing sort of thing saying, hi, I want to do this. The person answered to it. Their email was hacked. That person was a financial person who then had the email hacked, and an invoice was sent to the financial division, say, please pay money into this account instead of into that account. We've done a change, and all of a sudden money started getting paid across. And it cost that company 100 million. And that was an internal phishing attack. We've got online policies where people have been hacked. Postbank was hacked to 89 million internally. So an internal division of that. MailChimp, in terms of sending things out, 102 South African accounts were attacked. And we know that ransomware is happening and people are paying against that or trying to recover. And later on in the slide, I'll chat to you about some more stuff on that. But we can see that all these sorts of crimes are happening day to day. It's reality. If you don't know someone who's had ransomware in a company, good luck to them. It's about to happen soon. So from those sets of things there that we're looking at, we can see that the trend is up. We can see that all these sets of things are happening. We can see that there are millions of hackers out there waiting to do things, and your IT department is pretty much stretched in the basic sets of things anyway. So one of the sets of things I was going to chat about was data mining. So we all got our cell phones. We all go ahead and we look at it and we go into Facebook. All of a sudden a quiz pops up and says, oh, answer this quiz, and your friends are sharing it. And it says something like, what school did you go to? What color are your eyes? What's your mom's surname? And it does a little thing and says you're a giraffe or you're a lion, you're this or you're that, and tries to count it. That's data mining. It's taking your information, building a huge big database on the back end and trying to use that as your security password questions against Google, against all your accounts. Usually, as people, it's not the youngins who are doing this, it's people my age, in their 40s and all the way up, who get fooled for this. They share the quiz around with Facebook. It could be, if my mom was on Facebook, my mother. It could be Bryn's mom. And these are the sets of things that happen, and they glean that information. It's a very simple way of doing it, and we fall for it because we think something that's on social media is trustworthy, and this app is coming through, and it's not. You download things, they don't have the security side by it. So the problem that you have with this is that you've got a lot of people who are basically creating these apps that go out there to glean information, and then they're quite happy to sell that information. So it stems back to certain sets of things of what we do with our information, and Poppy, we all know about that. That came out and everyone's talking about it. And we also need to look at how we look at our information locally and how we just protect ourselves locally. In the slides that we have a look at it, there's some percentages here and what is actually happening in the real world, with 94% of the ransom attacks attempted to affect the backup. So what happens is if ransomware gets in your environment, besides trying to get your live environment, it's also going for your backups. So it can disable any recovery that you could have as well. It goes through network shares, it goes through everything and tries to take it out. 47% of data has been encrypted in a ransomware attack. 32% of the organizations who paid for a ransomware attack didn't get their data back. 86% were engaged with a third party for assistance, so they call in someone else to come help them try recover. 92% have a defined ransomware response team. So that's having a team available. So do you have a budget available? Do you have a marketing team to release a press release on it? Do you have your technical team ready to be able to do stuff? Are you ready for an attack? Are you ready to recover from it? As I said earlier, it's a case of not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. 52% believe that a significant or complete overhaul is needed between your backup and your security team. So what we're saying is usually there's silos in IT and silos between different things and even outsourced. So do you have the ability that your team that's doing the backup has also worked with the security team to ensure that your mitigation is happening? And there's interesting things behind that. I can use something that happened to me the other day. I was resetting up my laptop. I was scanning for network shares. I got an email from our security NOC division saying, it looks like your laptop's scanning another area. Was this you? Or do we have to see if you got malware on it? So that's a proactive monitoring in our environment. I was very impressed because I knew we're doing it, but I was very impressed that 5 minutes after the scan that I'd done, I got an email saying, was this you? So those are the sets of things you can have a look at where you're bridging that gap. You have a look at it in terms of everything, a mitigation, and I'm not going to take away and explain everything on backup. We've got a couple of other people to come chat about things as well. But the basic mitigation strategy is your backup rule is 3-2-1. 3 copies of data, 2 different locations, 1 data somewhere else or offline. It's looking at how we can do these sets of things. Ransomware happens, it's how you recover from it. So do you have a strategy in place? Do you have clean data? Have you restored that data? Have you checked it? A lot of people say, it's backed up, it doesn't matter. And then when you really need it, it's not there. There's a problem, or it takes 3 weeks to restore. What we look at from this side of things, and some of the other presenters will talk about it, is real case scenarios of how the backups are working. And then orchestrating workflows, recovery times, reducing the time to remediate. You should be with the right system in place, being able to recover from an event quite quickly. If you've got the right strategy in place. If you don't have the right strategy in place, it could take you weeks, if not months, to recover. We're looking at really topical facts like Transnet was hacked. How long did it take them to get back online? And it was several, if I remember, and I think it was in December time, took 4 to 6 weeks before they could start bringing on some of the things and bringing their systems in place. They had the backups, but the strategy on how to implement it and recover must have cost them a small fortune. So the key thing that I can say here is backup, backup, backup. Make sure that your data is secure. Make sure you've got multiple copies. If you've got it on-prem, make sure you've got one off-prem somewhere else. I'm going to let Veeam chat about some of these things as well. I'm going to chat about Duby Tradeport just slightly in terms of the fact that we are a Veeam reseller. We're a silver partner in the environment. We have our own data center this side using different sets of information in order to back up and work with both private and public sector. I'm not going to go in depth about that. I'll leave the Veeam side of things to the Veeam expert, Mr. Albrecht. And from that, I want to thank everybody. For anyone who needs further information, anyone out there who's streaming and everything, there will be follow-up information about this. We will be able to go in depth on some of the service offerings and things like that. But I'm going to hand over back to our MC, I believe. Huh? Thanks very much, guys.
You sound like you're not sure if you're going to hand over to me. It's fine. You can be the MC for the rest of it. You know what, guys? We are vulnerable as business. So I'm sure this is also bringing an element of understanding what is actually happening. It's fine to try and go online and promote your companies and sell products, but you're also exposing yourself. So thank you so much, Steve Ovo and Bryn. Now we're going to move over to the next gentleman, Ian, who's the technical sales manager for VM Africa. Now what they do is they have a software that develops backup, disaster recovery, and modern data protection software for virtual, physical, and multi-infrastructure infrastructures rather. Now Ian has a wealth of knowledge in applying technology in all its forms, especially to business processes. So I'm looking forward to hearing from him about the cybersecurity and ransomware updates. All I know is tap away, but yes, let's bring the ransomware. Ian.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Ian Albrecht. I'm the technical sales manager for Veeam in Africa. And basically what we do as a product, like you already mentioned, is we protect data across different infrastructures. So today I'm going to focus mainly around security because it is a security event. And if we look at, so we did an independent survey in 2021, and we looked at stats from all our customers globally. And we asked them some simple questions about the cybersecurity, and we looked at all the feedback. And from 2015 up until 2021, what we've noticed is that security or cybersecurity threats and attacks, are on the increase, to the point that in 2015, it was happening, a cyber attack was happening every 120 seconds, down to 2021, where cyber attack is happening every 11 seconds. So you can see that the gap is shortening, having more and more frequency from a cybersecurity threat perspective. The other side of that is the actual cost that is implicated with that attack. Companies initially were not losing that much money. Ransomware wasn't that popular. They weren't paying the actual ransoms. But this global cost from an attack perspective has increased from just below 5 billion US all the way to about 20 billion US in 2021. So you can see that the frequency is increasing and the cost of the actual attack is on the rise. If we want to mitigate a cyber threat, we actually have to understand what a cyber threat is. So from a cybersecurity perspective, what they do is there'll be multiple actions that they'll take on your infrastructure. That would include data encryption, data deletion, data exfiltration, data injection, and device locking. So if we break them down, data encryption, very straightforward. They take your data, they encrypt it, and they hold your ransom. You have to actually pay to unencrypt your data. So while it's encrypted, it's locked, only they have the password to unlock it. Data deletion is straightforward. They delete your data. So they'll go and find specific information that's key to the company, delete that information so the company cannot continue with this day-to-day. Data exfiltration is actually stealing your data. So imagine IP or intellectual property that they will find in the company, steal that information and then threaten to leak it online and then hurt the company. So it could be legal information that might hurt the company. It could be IP in the way that maybe you designed the new electric car and they want to share the plans online, right? Which would hurt the company. Data injection is when they go in and they put in malware or inject bad code into certain data so that when it's reused in the company, it will then do whatever they tell it to do. So it would potentially attack a company's platform. So for example, maybe putting some bad code in a bank and making the bank transfer money between different accounts without them even knowing. And then device locking would just be keeping the company out of a specific platform. So you might have, for example, a website that you sell or web store. They could just bring it down and stop your customers from accessing the web store. And the tools that they'll use to actually accomplish this are phishing, malware, ransomware, and denial of service, which is also known as DDoS or DDoS. So phishing is a method where they send you a fake email that looks legitimate, and you actually click on a link, and it will trick you into logging into some portal that's not real, and you'll give away your credentials. And I'll show you an example in a coming slide. And then malware is just a type of virus or a type of malicious code that gets downloaded, or it can be attachment. It can come in multiple forms. One of those forms is ransomware. Ransomware is a type of malware that will encrypt your data automatically, and then you'll have to pay for the password to unlock the data. And then denial of service is just a bunch of traffic that they use. They send to your website or to your platform to bring it down so that no one else can access the platform. So we need to understand why, in my first slide, why the cyber attacks are on the rise. And there's three factors here that actually indicate why this is growing, why the threat is growing, why this is happening more frequently. And that's gains, reach, and the safety of it. So the gains, as we've gone through this technical revolution and more companies are going through a transformation and changing their systems to digital and moving online, the value to the company is actually the data, right? It's just, it doesn't matter what platform you're using, if you're using cloud or if it's physical, it's the actual data, which is the currency of the organization. So the gains here are, from a cyber criminal's perspective, we look at from their side, is if we lock your data, you have no choice but to pay us. Or if we steal your data, you have no choice but to pay us, right? So the gains are there because they understand the value of data, and data is digital at the moment. The reach is that as we change and we evolve from a technical perspective, more and more devices are getting connected to the network and to the internet. So the reach is there. They can sit in another country, a foreign country, or sit in Europe, and they have access to systems that are sitting here in South Africa because more and more devices are being connected. The safety of it is that when you pay these ransoms or when you're paying them off, you're using cryptocurrency. And the way the cryptocurrency was designed was to be anonymous. And there's no tracking, there's no way that you can actually trace this person after you've paid them off. So even after you've been held ransom, you paid them off and you go to the police or to whatever organization to help you and report this, there's no way to actually trace it back to who actually did this attack because it's anonymous, the anonymity of it. So this brings me to the next point, and this is the value and volume of data over the last few years has grown so much, and they understand this. And the value of data to an organization should be the main aspect, right? It shouldn't matter whether you have physical service today or tomorrow you're running in Azure or you're in AWS, you protect your data. That is your currency. The currency of any organization right now is data. So data is the lifeblood of any organization. So I have a screenshot up, and this is an example of what phishing is. So what is phishing? It's emails disguised as an actual authentic email that will look like, for example, what's on the screen, coming from Microsoft telling you need to verify your account. And this is very easy to trick a user, and they'll click the link. And what will happen then is they'll go into a website or a URL to the browser that will look exactly like the product. So it will look like a Microsoft page. Put in your username and password, and at that point you've been hacked because the credentials, the username and password has been sent to the hacker. From that point, he's got access into the account. So depending on who the person is that clicked the phishing link, whether it's an admin, whether it's a user, they have access to that person's data. They can log in, it's untraceable, they're using the right username, they're using the right password. So if we look at the anatomy of an actual ransomware attack, most of the times it starts off with a phishing email. They will target specific people in the company, get them to click the link because it looked like it came from Microsoft, looked like it came from AWS or whichever vendor that the customer is using. They'll click on it, provide the credentials. This person might be from the IT department. They suddenly have the details to access the IT systems. And at that point, they'll go and find the data that's relevant to the company, encrypt it, and then you'll get a nice message saying, hey, if you want your data back, you need to pay us, 1,000 Bitcoin or whatever it be, right? $1,000 worth of Bitcoin. Once you pay, there's no guarantee that you would actually get the key or the password to unlock your data. These are criminals. They've already, you paid the criminal. There's no guarantee the criminal's actually going to give you the key to unlock your data. There's no guarantee that they're criminals, right? Also under the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime globally, their position on it is that most cases, these syndicates that are hacking organizations are actually in links with terrorist organizations. So you might be paying a hacking group to get your data back, and they might be involved in other type of criminal activities that might look bad to you. So it's advised not to actually pay them. So what do you do to actually protect yourself? So from a Veeam perspective, we follow what's called a Nist cybersecurity framework. So Nist is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's a globally adopted platform. And what this entails is they have a certain few factors that they follow, which is identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And what that actually means from a Veeam perspective is you need to identify what information is critical to the business, right? So from a Veeam product, we have monitoring and analytics. We can go look into the environment. We can tell you what data is critical, what's being used, where that data is located, which country, which city. And this is important because you need to understand how to protect that information. If it's in Cape Town, you need to protect it into Cape Town or whatever infrastructure you have there, for example. If it's critical financial data, you might need to back up more frequently than other type of data. So the next point then is once you've identified your information, you need to protect the information. When you protect the information, you need to use strategies like you've heard before, which is the 3-2-1-0 rule, right? So you need to have 3 copies of your data, 2 of those being on 2 different types of storage medium, 1 of those being offsite or offline. you need to look at things like immutable storage. Immutable storage is a type of storage where the data that's written to it cannot be changed. It's in a worm format, which means write once, read many. So you can always access it, but once it's written, it can never be changed again, right? And that's important because as soon as you get hacked, they can't go and change the data, they can't delete it, they can't encrypt it, you still have access to the information. The next point would be encrypted storage. The one part is them cyber criminal deleting your information or changing your information. The other part is stealing your information. So if it's encrypted by you, you hold the password, they can't read the information. So it's very important to encrypt your data. The next point is detection. So if we go I spoke about identify, I spoke about protect. The next point would be detect, right? So you've identified the critical information, you've protected it. Now you need to put in measures in place that you can detect potential ransomware or cyber threats in your infrastructure. So we have monitoring and analytics from an alerting perspective that will help you identify if there's potential ransomware events happening in infrastructure or anomalies in your data. Sorry. And then you would go into a respond, right, where you would have an orchestration plan in place. You would have a recovery plan or SLA validation plan that you would respond to an event that you've detected in your infrastructure. Lastly would be recovery. It doesn't help that you have 3-2-1 rule in place. So you have 3 copies of your data, 2 of them on different types of storage, 1 offline, but you can't recover from any copies because they're corrupted or they're inaccessible. So it's very important that you can recover. You need to have things like instant recovery where you can automatically recover data without having to copy it from one place to another place. You need to have secure recovery where you're able to scan data before you put it back into production to make sure that you're not reinfecting your infrastructure when you're responding to an event. So this brings me to a point where backups essentially are your last line of defense. You can have the best security in your infrastructure, but at the end of the day, backups are going to be your last line of defense. They can get through your firewalls, get into your infrastructure, and at the end of the day, you'll have backups to look to that you can then recover your data if anything happens. So if we look to Veeam, to combat data encryption, deletion, exfiltration, injection that I explained initially, we'll use things like immutability, we'll use things like encryption, we'll use location tagging, authentication, so that we can control who's got access to the data, we can control what happens with the data, and even if they did gain access into your infrastructure, you still have backups that will be your last line of defense into the infrastructure. So from a Veeam perspective, it's quite a broad platform and will protect you from an application perspective, software as a service, from a physical, unstructured data, from a virtual perspective on-prem, as well as if you're in the hyperscaler public cloud, right? So on the screen, there's quite a broad variety of different platforms that we support, and there's different ways to support it. And what's important is, as infrastructure changes and you're using these different platforms, you might have some servers in the hyperscaler cloud or in public cloud, you might have some servers on-prem. You need a single platform that's going to protect and monitor all these infrastructures. Over and above that, the challenges that we see is that a lot of companies don't have the skill to manage these platforms, where Veeam, in this perspective, we have a service provider offering where we enable companies like Duby Tradeport that can actually create services out of our different products. So they can offer you backup, on-prem or backup in the cloud or backup of your 365 Office as a service, because we've given them the software and they have the skills, they have the expertise, they have the infrastructure. You don't have to worry about that. You just pay as a service to them. When it comes to my last point, which I just want to re-stress, is you heard 3-2-1, right? 3-2-1, which is a standard adopted best practice when it comes to backup, which is 3 copies of your data, 2 on different media, 1 off-site. But Veeam believes in 3-2-1-1-0. And the additional 1 is 1 copy that's offline or 1 copy that's air-gapped or immutable, which means it cannot be accessed, it cannot be changed. Zero meaning zero errors across all of the different copies that you have in your infrastructure. It's important that you test every single copy that you have of data. When you're coming into or responding to an event, you want to make sure that you're recoverable. That brings me to the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian. And guys, what I'm picking up basically is this cyber attacks have increased somewhat 600% since the pandemic. That is insane. So clearly we need to do something about this. And I think what Ian is also saying is that VM is going to make sure that you do not get data swindled. So if you like sharing information, it might happen, but with them, they'll make sure that they take care of you. To the next point, ladies and gentlemen, we have the next beautiful lady coming on stage. Her name is Mary Ann Gavender. She's the marketing director for a KZN-based Black woman-owned IT company called Honeycomb Architect Solutions. Now, what they do is they deal with wall-to-wall. They deal with wall-to-wall solutions. And this is only for the Microsoft platforms. However, this includes disaster data cap. Sorry, man, I'm forgetting this one word. I'm forgetting this one word, but I'm sure she's going to share with you guys exactly what the company does. But I appreciate the fact that it's Black, it's female, and it's owned and it's right chain KZN. So she's going to come up on stage and just tell you more about her company, Honeycomb Architect Solutions. Give a round of applause.
Thank you, MC. So my name is Mary Ann Gavender, as you've heard, and I represent Honeycomb Solutions Architects. So Honeycomb Solutions Architects is a South African Black-owned woman company, and we specialize in custom Microsoft solutions and technologies. Honeycomb Solutions was established to focus on delivering internet, intranet, and extranet collaboration portals to clients of all sizes. We are now recognized with project success track records and have, through collaboration, extended our services offerings as follows. The first being disaster recovery and cloud backup, IT strategies and implementation plan development, IT governance, IT solution advisory, project governance management, and workflow automations. Still a little about VM Cloud Connect. We currently resell VM Cloud Connect services out of Dubai Connect. For example, we have a client on the VM Cloud Connect site, which is Human Science Research Council. VM Cloud Connect makes it easy to get backup So VM Cloud Connect makes it easy to get backup and replica of sites to a backup as a service or disaster recovery as a service provider without the cost and complexity of managing a sticky infrastructure. And this is so key for the public sector and the private sector. The reason being that immediately you cut down on cost. There's no cost on hardware, and you actually save a lot in terms of your budgets and also increase your cash flows. For where we are right now, we know that many of the companies and the organizations are really going through a very difficult time when it comes to financial constraints. And VM Cloud Connect makes it absolutely cost effective to do our backup services and to have a disaster recovery site as well. The VM Cloud Connect replication, I'm just going to go through this very quickly. So VM Cloud Connect replication actually takes from a on-prem customer, if you're looking at the design, it actually takes from a customer on-prem through the internet to Dubai Tradeport data center, and we can run it either in VMware or Microsoft Hyper-V. So the VM backup and replication provides disaster recovery through image-based VM replication. It provides VM Cloud Connect replication resources for the following virtualization platforms, like I just said, VMware and Microsoft Hyper-V. Looking at the cloud repository, it's a hardened Linux repository in the data center store. It stores data securely. So looking at the design that's there, the replication goes from on-prem across the cloud into the data center, and then it can be brought up from the repository server. If it goes live, it can be backed up, okay? Then it also provides an amazing hardware plan. And if you look at the hardware plan, the product allows a hardware plan, making invoking DR very easy. And this will also, this also allows ease of use in the data center, okay? So looking at the design, you will see we can do a hardware plan, which is your CPU, plus your RAM and your storage with dedicated networking, so that in the event that DR is invoked, it will come up. Your VM Cloud Connect replication, VM Cloud Connect replication allows live data to be replicated from the client premises to the data center, the internet, and encrypted into a secure environment. So the design, if you're looking at the screen, how it works, its replication goes from on-prem across the cloud into the data center, and then it can be brought up from the repository server. If it goes live, it can be backed up. Going next to the next slide, it's the tenant task utilizing a cloud host. So the tenant can configure the job to fail over or fail back. We can restore from a replica. It's important to have partial for failover and failback, so that your data moves from one side to the other and from the other side back. So if you're doing a full site failover, because everything goes down, you can roll everything over again, okay? Looking at cloud replica, failover and backup, there's two sides of it. One is the partial site failover, and then you have the full site failover. It's just depending on the needs you choose as to how to implement failover. So depending on the scale of the disaster that affects the production site, a tenant can choose one of the following cloud failover scenarios. Like I said, the partial site failover, just to explain a bit on that, one of the several VMs becomes corrupted and fails over to the replica of the cloud host. And then, of course, your full site failover, the whole production site is down and it becomes unavailable and everything is critical. Then the VMs that run independent applications fail over to the replicas on the cloud host. Just to elaborate on the partial failover, what it does, it brings up a single server based on your needs. So you, the tenant, could be the proxy from the appliance. That's how you load VM in it, and it gives you connectivity. Looking at the design on the screen, on your left, you will see the site is down, and on the right, you'll see the two is up. And this brings it up on the repository side, so that when one server fails, it comes up on the other. Your full site failover. The full site failover is performed in the similar way as the regular failover with a failover plan. The main difference is that the full site failover processes contains additional steps regarding the use of the provider side network extension appliances. So the full site failover, all the servers, is full DR is invoked. So the full site failover is actually when you can bring all the servers up. And looking at the design on this here, you can see that everything is down on the tenant side, And if you look at the repository site, you can see all the servers are being brought up again. So we're currently looking at all businesses currently. And if we look at the businesses, there's 55% of business that's left unprotected. What do I mean by this? If you look at this, the screen, you'll see that maybe replicated, 300 Office 365 is not backed up properly or fully. So it may be replicated against data centers, but there is no official backup. It doesn't have an official backup, and there's no control in terms of deletion, like you've just Ian mentioned. And also there's no control in terms of data that is sitting in there. So VM's brought about a package, and there are 7 reasons why we need Microsoft to be backed up, Office 365. And I'm going to just go through them very, very quickly with you. So the 7 reasons why we back up Microsoft. If you look at the first one, it says accidental deletion. This is where we would find that where your data goes, where you kind of delete and it goes into the recycle bin. And then the second one is your retention policy. So this is when you are storing your finance documents there and you need to back it up for 7 years, okay? And you got your internal security threats. It's because of departing employees, so people that leave work and saying to stay, it's going to stay in it. So in this, you're going to delete it off that internal security. This can affect the internal security threats as well. Your external security threats, this is because of ransomware and people trying to make money out of it, like Ian explained very nicely in detail. And then you got your legal and compliance requirements. In terms of data, it must be backed up. And because of the hybrid, if you look, the next one is managing hybrid deployments and mitigations. Because of the hybrid deploymentry, you got people with on-prem and you got Office 365 sitting in the cloud, and it's being used as a mixture. And therefore, no real governance behind that, okay? And then we have, lastly, there were on the 7 reasons why you need Microsoft Office 365 as a backup. We've got the Teams data structure. This information put into Teams is how this is being backed up, and how it's been brought down again, looking at backup and looking at this. These are the reasons why we need Office 365 backup. I'm going to go then to VM backup on Microsoft Office 365. It does a backup for Office 365 where we can load this in and you can back up your Exchange SharePoint, your Exchange, your SharePoint, your OneDrives and Teams. In this way, you are well protected. And in closing, VM backup for Office Microsoft 365 protects your Microsoft 365 data. It quickly restores individual Microsoft 365 items and files, and it meets legal and compliance requirements. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mary Ann. You know what? I know what it is. I remember now. It was the KZN floods. That's the last time I dealt with the word disaster. I was trying to get at disaster recovery services. That's what the company also specializes in doing. Now, on to another Black-owned company, 100% Black-owned, that is. I've got one of the directors there, Bonga Makuba, who's got over 12 years of IT audit, and he is going to be sharing with us AMA new trends when it comes to IT audit. And of course, he's right behind me. And it's coming from Olix Technologies. So please let's give him a warm round of applause. I like the fact that he's also got a government background. So, they're primitive in terms of what we're talking about today. So let's see what he has to say.
Thank you. Good morning, colleagues. As introduced, Siabonga Makubu from Olix Technologies. I think for most of the individuals sitting here. It's that time of the year for that famous saying, the auditors are coming. And, you know, it's such a funny term that it always happens towards the end of the financial year, where we're saying, guys, make sure we're getting the information ready. Guys, make sure the evidence is ready. These guys are coming, and it's all about the stress coming from the number of findings we're gonna get and how it's going to impact our bonuses and how it's going to impact a lot of things. However, it should actually not be the case. We should actually be saying, auditors, you know what, it's June. Hey, these guys are coming. It's time for us to basically check how well we've done. It's time for us to actually trend and see how far we compare to the market. How do we compare to other municipalities? How do we compare to other entities that are basically doing similar things that we do? Because the biggest problem that we have is that we will worry about all the different topics, about all the different concepts that we need to worry about in our day-to-day lives, but we end up focusing on the wrong things and not necessarily the one key thing that we should be focusing on, the one thing that glues us in the different functions as ICT to the overall business within the organization, and that is risk management and governance. And governance plays such a significant role in the heart of the organization. Governance plays a significant role in the day-to-day operations of the organization. We look at a steering committee. Almost every entity has got a ICT steering committee. But what are we doing in these IT steering committees? What are we talking about? What are the educational contents that we're speaking about? Yes, we'll speak about a patch not being done. Yes, we're speaking about a potential firewall rule not being updated. Yes, those are the day-to-day things. But we need to look at the softer issues from a governance perspective. We need to look at the educational component. Yes, we've got a steering committee. How often have we actually spent time with council to tell them about what does it mean to have a cyber risk? Cyber council is the overseeing oversight body within the municipalities. How much do we educate them on the impacts or the focus or the investment that they need to be driving towards ICT to make sure that ICT is sufficiently skilled, ICT has the necessary resources, ICT has the right structures to ensure that we're in a position to deal and handle with cybersecurity issues. And if you look at the news now, we know TransUnion, the guys have mentioned quite a few that have been hacked. But the funny part is I've never heard of a municipality in the news that's being hacked. And I wonder, you know, if you look at TransUnion, there's that Avenger, they've got nice Avenger names of late, Spiderlog. They go and hack TransUnion. They pull in credit data, but it's credit data on who? Mine doesn't matter, I'm sure. But if we could get the likes of political elites, that definitely matters. We want to see where are they getting money from? What are they doing? But in the very same tone, in municipalities, we've got a lot of data about political elites. Do we know if political elites even pay their rates? Do we know if the municipality allows a political elite to have an account that's sitting with an area balance with an aged debt of over 18 months? That would be good information for a front page news. And that information is there. So our information is just as critical. So how is it that municipalities are not in the newspapers? And how is it that municipalities have not been hacked? And my understanding or my layman interpretation simply says it's purely because there's a high likelihood that we don't know. Do we know that if we've got a ransom attack in our environment waiting to happen? We don't know. Why? Because we are not investing in security operation centers. We are not investing in platforms that are going to enable us within the ITT departments to extract this type of information, escalate it up to the executive management team, escalate it up to the finance department for their budget considerations in the next coming year, escalate it up to council to say, council, this is basically what's happening in our environment and this is the risk that we are facing as a municipality. It's not necessarily forthcoming. So there's a number of elements that are there that are actually of critical importance to a municipal body. But now, if we are working with the internal audit department or the external auditors, do we think they're adding value? Yeah, they're coming through, they're giving us, this is their scope of work. When is it that we come back and say, yes, I get your scope of work, but please also look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are my key concern areas. And why do we want to work with internal audit and risk and the external auditors? They are consistently running through with workshops. They are looking at the trends. They know what's happening where. You know, they're attending the IT web conferences, they're attending ISACA conferences, they're attending a myriad of risk-based conferences and platforms that basically give them insight as to what is happening in the environment. A lot of municipalities, specifically cities, are talking about smart city transitioning. But smart city transitioning is, yes, great. It's a great initiative. It's going to give us a platform to engage and interact with our customers. But what does it mean from a risk perspective? And that we have not necessarily then considered. So the time has come for us to really look at how we change our engagement model with our internal audit functions, how we change our engagement model with our external audit functions, how we change our engagement model with our risk management functions, purely because the concepts, for example, that Ian mentioned, we should be sitting within our own individual functions and saying, what is our risk assessment? What risks are applicable to us? And the nice thing about that process is it allows us to look at the different options. For example, that Ian has mentioned and say, okay, guys, we know there's phishing attacks. We know there's going to be direct hacks. We know there's going to be ransomwares. We know there's going to be a different myriad of attacks that are possible in our environment. The nice thing about that is it then forces us to say, okay, what is the potential risk mitigation plan? The risk mitigation plan comes with activities, it comes with resourcing, it comes with cost, and that gives us a leverage and a platform to go to the risk committee and say, risk committee, these are the risks applicable to us. This is the impact should this risk materialize within this environment. And this is the cost that would actually be due to the municipality. And from a budgeting perspective, this is the amount that we're now basically looking at saying, from an investment component, this is our 5-year strategy, and this is basically how we would like to gauge and run in terms of mitigating our risks, and as a continuous exercise, not just as a once-off tick box activity to satisfy the auditors. It doesn't really work like that. So the more we change the manner of approach, the more we give focus to governance and governance activities, the more we are ready to start focusing on what really matters within the environments we are at. So it is important that we focus a lot on, one, awareness and training, making sure that the powers that be within the environments are trained and are made aware of what it means. I mean, an IP address and pinging a network or a phishing attack, they wouldn't really get those kind of things, because there's still instances whereby we still have to go through a process of granularly explaining what a cloud platform is. But it's all about the direction, it's all about education, it's all about getting the oversight body to be involved within our processes. King, for example, King has a strict principle on 10 that says that the oversight body, which is council, which is the board in private sectors, is responsible for directing and overseeing ICT within an environment. But if the engagement model that we have within our municipalities or within our individual organizations is not structured in a manner that enables them to do the governance and the oversight of ICT, we will consistently be that small ICT function that's worried about the boxes and the email is down and the password needs to change. And we are really not evolving to becoming an enabler of business that is focused and purely dedicated in ensuring that the structure or the security within the environment is what it should be. As a result, there's a lot of focus that comes in. Most of the time it's done as a tick box exercise, but there's a reason why the ICT governance charter is actually important within your environment. The charter allows you to think of the different oversight bodies that should be involved to make sure that within ICT, one, we've got the right audience. The right audience is aware of what needs to happen. The right audience is aware of the risks that are applicable to us. And the right audience is there to support us even before the auditors come. before the auditors come, we should be running with our own activities. Before the auditors come, we should be striving to shine and basically beefing up our environment and making sure that from a structure and an oversight perspective, we've got a setup that enables us to pass information through to the board or through to council. And we should also have a mechanism to extract the council's expectations down to the ICT team, down to the cybersecurity team, to make sure that whatever we are doing is intertwined and they actually are aware of the activities that basically need to happen within our environment. So there's a number of building blocks that we need to worry about in the development of our ICT strategies. There's a number of building blocks that we need to worry about in the development of our IT governance charter. And it's not just a tick box document to have there when it's requested by the auditors and then it gets ticked off. It actually means value. It's a living document. It allows us to unpack. And I'll just give you a simple trick. Are you aware that if an auditor is coming into your environment and you're actually being audited, when I come through as an auditor in your environment and I do an assessment and I realize I find a finding, it's a critical finding, you know, the moment I find that finding in your risk register and you've actually got a mitigation plan for that risk, it basically means I can no longer rate it as critical, right? Because I now need to think differently about it. It's a management is aware. It's something that management is dealing with. There is a plan to deal and address to deal with the specific finding and address it. So from a risk perspective, it then changes the overall perception of that finding. It changes the interpretation or the criticality of the rating of that specific finding. Hence, it actually then makes sense for us to then be proactive in our own assessments, draw in internal audit. I can tell you now, wherever they are, they would be so happy to be part of what you are doing. They'd be so happy to impart the knowledge that they've got on the existing risks that are currently applicable in the cybersecurity landscape. They will tell you exactly what attack has happened where and where was the vulnerability. Sometimes it's not necessarily a port. Sometimes it's not a firewall rule. Sometimes it's actually someone making a phone call and someone erroneously gave them the password because they acted to be IT. It's a social engineering attack. So there is a number of elements that we can basically derive from integrating with the existing risk management function, integrating with the existing internal audit function, and also leveraging off the year-on-year, without fail, every year, we will get the Auditor General to come into our environment. How many environments are they evaluating? Thousands. And we want to say, draw in from your experience. This is what we are doing. Yes, we see your scope, but from your scope, we also want you to cover 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we have to change the whole mindset of findings being looked at as an opportunity to stick certain elements on certain individuals for specific agendas. It's there, the more findings we have, the more platform of growth we have, because we are enlightened, we've got view, we know what we need to be dealing with. You know, there's a lot of changes that are happening in the environment. I mean, you get blockchain, there's a lot of blockchain technologies going around. They speak about, there's what's it called? Blockchain, what's the Bitcoins, the likes of Ethereum and so forth, you know, that is slowly coming in. There are countries that have fully adopted the technology and there are actual countries running on a blockchain platform. You know, those are good opportunities, those are good technologies. In the future, a municipality might have that, I don't know. But it's a trend that is actually now coming in from an auditing platform. Steve, for example, spoke of a number of things that Dube is offering from a cloud technology perspective. The auditing approach is now changing to saying, okay, let us focus on cloud. Yes, it's a good platform for us. Yes, it takes away a number of cost components. It makes a lot of number of operational activities to be easier to manage internally within the ICT function. So that's all good and well. However, it does pose risk. So from a risk perspective, the auditors are now starting to also focus on cloud technology, the use of cloud in your environment. Yes, it's a good platform. You've got DR. Yes, you've got a backup. It's sitting on cloud. But it does not necessarily mean that now, because Steve has got it covered for you, you're no longer worried about it. Steve needs to come back to you and say, yes, your backup is run. Yes, your DR is run. Your DR is ready. Yes, we need to simulate. You know, we've tested and yes, it's working. And in the midst of DR as well, we now need to start saying, okay, we're testing disaster recovery, which is always about the resumption of systems. We switch off the primary site, we turn on the secondary site. Yes, they are work. But is it really sufficient? How are we testing our cyber risk mitigation plans? How are we testing our recovery and sustainability should we have a cyber attack? If we were to get ransom attacks tomorrow, have we tested that in our DR strategies? Because our DR plans half the time, we're doing them, yes, but it's to satisfy the auditors. We're ticking the box. However, have we covered all the components of a disaster from a cybersecurity component? And half the time, that is not necessarily covered, purely because we are focusing a lot on the technical operations and the restarting of servers and whatnots. So we really need to try and embed the whole engagement and move to a cybersecurity, driven DR, cybersecurity driven, preparation from an audit perspective, and really enforce our ICT governance activities and functions to be fully embedded of cybersecurity elements. And the biggest message, and I still repeat it, to ensure that we integrate with internal audit. Internal audit can basically give us insight. Internal audit can give us the platform of growth, and internal audit can actually help us prepare to work with the different cyber threats that are basically emerging within our environment. So there's a lot of change management that we need to worry about in doing that. And change management is a critical topic that we basically need to be worried about, from getting people ready to change their mindset, change their way of doing things. We need to do a lot of change management activities internally. It's not necessarily an exercise we do when we're implementing an ERP system. No, it's an exercise that we should actually be doing continuously throughout the year to make sure that from a change management perspective, we are educating our users, we are educating our counselors, we are getting our counselors to sit in council and speak about ICT and cybersecurity as a line item. So it is not necessarily the stress of the IT manager to say, hey, I need to worry about cyber risks, but I don't have the money to do it. Yes, you're expected to do cyber risks, but you're running a 4-man team. You've got 8 vacancies that have not been filled within your department. But the people that need to prioritize that budget for you are not necessarily as aware as you are of the impact that these vacancies are creating in the overall organization, not just within your function specifically. So change management is then a very key component that we need to make sure that we are running with in our day-to-day activities. In the essence of time, I'm going to try and just wrap up. There's a number of issues that we then need to worry about. There's a lot of, in each and every municipality, every department, 100% guaranteed there's legacy systems in there. Those legacy systems you can't touch. Those legacy systems you can customize. They are continuously giving you findings day in, day out. And those legacy systems are actually making you vulnerable to cyber threat attacks. So we need to start thinking differently about those. Risk management. Let us assess the risks that these cybersecurity, these legacy systems are imposing to the environment. Let us quantify the risk. If there's a possibility, let us restrict the attack surface applicable that these cybersecurity, these legacy systems are basically making us vulnerable to. Let us worry about the legacy systems because we can't change them until budget is available and we've got nice ERPs that you can plug into the environment. But we need to consistently be worried about the treatment and the management of these legacy systems, not just as ICT saying, if we can't really deal much about it, but let us bring these legacy systems into our risk management framework. Let us have them in the risk assessment platforms so that we know that the risk affiliated with these legacy systems is addressed. We know that the risk affiliated with these legacy systems from an exposure perspective is managed. That basically then puts us in a position to effectively report and say to management, you know what, management? Yes, we've got them. Auditors, yes, we've got them, but we know our risk. The more we know about our own environment, the better. The more we worry about our SOC, our Security Operations Center, the more we as ICT start to tell business about a potential attack. Is there someone that's trying to ping our environment continuously? Like Steve mentioned, so he's tried to scan his internal environment. Is there someone within our own municipalities who tells us, guys, there's someone who's busy with a lot of activity in the environment, potential attack, potential hack? You know, we need to worry about those things and make sure that we bring the whole concept of risk management and embed it into our day-to-day operations, and through that process, integrate with the existing risk management and the internal audit function. That will ensure that we've got a seamless integration upwards through to council and board, and downwards back to the lower level staff. Thank you so much, guys. I will end it there.
Yeah, I know. Remember, I said it's behind me. IT, I mean, internal audit guys, that's how they make you feel. You're always scared. When they walk in, they're like, so, and it's tall. So very intimidated, but thank you so much, Sia. Budgeting seems to be like the thing that we need to focus on as well for businesses, because you always put miscellaneous. Change that now to what you need to put in order to counter attack, or, you know, find a way to address issues of cyber crime and your cybersecurity, because clearly it's not the looting anymore that you guys should be worried about. It's this data swindling. Anyway, one more time, let's please give our speakers a warm round of applause. Now, I'm sure that you guys can agree that their business acumen is right up there, and they've given us a more like a heightened level of awareness when it comes to the real threat of cyber attacks. And importantly, it's given us a newfound knowledge in terms of the latest cybersecurity and ransomware mitigation efforts. So yeah, no, we are right on track. But then again, now I want to switch things up. If that's okay, the team can assist me as well. We are about to get into our panel discussion. And of course, I did mention earlier on that you guys are at home in the office, and the guys that are here with us physically, you can interact with us and ask those questions that you've been dying to ask regarding cyber issues and whatnot. And we've got a very good team behind me that's going to be in a part of this panel, and they're very keen on answering your questions as well. So let us switch it up and get into the panel discussion. Testing. Perfect. Can we have a mic or two as well? And yeah, I don't know if the people at home can see me, you know. I want to make sure we're covered. So please feel free to seek answers for any of your concerns regarding cybersecurity, guys. Yeah. I think with me, I'll just ask a few questions, and I'll be very specific as well, just to make sure that I honor the time that we have set out. So the first question I want to ask, I think I want to ask Bryn, what do you feel? What do you feel are the top exploits that compromise the security of IT environment?
Okay, so there's been a couple of studies done recently, and the top four are, and we've heard it called a couple of things. The first one, and this is kind of in order. The first one we've heard called phishing and social engineering, and that is, it is the person factor. So that's the Facebook messages, the phone call from IT. That's the person factor. That's where you're compromising the individual. What was your first car? It was a VW Beetle. What was your best friend's name? And you tag your first best friend's name, and you tag them on Facebook. What is one of the most asked security questions to recover a password? What was your first best friend? They've just got your recovery pass answer, by the way, for your password. The second one is RDP. So RDP is, and I don't know if any of you in this room saw me playing with my phone earlier on. It's a remote desktop protocol. It's basically accessing your servers remotely from the outside. So I told you I've got a smart home. I got notification that the gate was open and the gate didn't close. I didn't get notification that the gate was closed. So that's the gateway, external gateway into the network. So I just went in and checked the gate where it was closed. So that's that gate that's not closed, your RDP access. So it's leaving the gateway open from external to your house, to your data, RDP. Okay. Your next one is unpatched software. So you all have cell phones and you get that notification to say there's more firmware, there's a new firmware, and the reason why there's new firmware is because it's to resolve a security issue. Your laptop at your servers or has the same thing. There's new software that comes out, and usually there is some type of patch that'll go, you need to apply this patch, and people often ignore that, or they don't have automated systems to patch. So that's the third one. And the last one of the four is password control. So not having passwords that are complex enough or are easily guessed. And I'm going to go to one of the things that Sia said, and I'm just going to add my fifth one. And it was just a really funny photo that came up on my CISO Alliance, which is your IT security officers alliance. And it is more to budget. And the photo kind of goes, it's three pictures, and the one is a picture of a speedboat, and it says what your IT security plan was. And the second one is a picture of somebody holding an iron over the ocean, and it says the budget. And the third one is a super yacht, and it says what you're expected to achieve for the ROI. So I'm going to go with the fifth one as budget.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brenda. I was also hoping you would touch on leak or inside leak or the inside
Yeah,
man.
so that kind of is your first one, your insider information.
Yeah.
You and I were kind of chatting a little bit.
Yeah.
About, things like passwords on and vulnerabilities on cell phones, and I've got we talk about Experian and TransUnion hacks and having things like your mail on your cell phone and the vulnerability of if you connected to a public wireless system, is your data being mined from your cell phone because you've got your work mail on your cell phone, or you've got work access to your office environment on your cell phone. So is that insider information, or is there an insider in your organization that's just giving that information away? Report scanning, thanks, Steve. and that insider is just giving you, creating that vulnerability because you have an insider and you're not detecting and you're not preventing what is going on in your organization. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's why I was saying leak, because you've got that insight.
Yeah,
Okay. Ian and maybe Marianne. So I don't know if you want to jump on this as well, but starting with Ian, what can be done to mitigate risk?
Yeah, there's a lot of things, but maybe I'll focus on just three that I think is quite important. And firstly, as you heard, passwords are what are being attacked mostly, what's been trying to be what's being exploited mostly, right? So like through different methods like phishing and so on. So but what's very easy thing to put in place is a multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication, where regardless of if they have your password, they still have to do another authentication. They still need that PIN code or that one-time PIN even after your password, and that just gives you that additional layer. I mean, they still get through that, but it's just an additional layer. I would say that the second to that would be encrypt your data, encrypt your communication, encrypt your data. Don't be exploited. Don't let your data be stolen. Don't let it get exfiltrated. This one thing is losing your information. The other is having your information shared publicly online. That's something, the internet lives forever. So encrypt your data, protect your data, secure it, right? And I would say encryption, immutability, those are technologies that people need to understand and look into. And then the last would be for an organization, not an individual, but for an organization, have a incident response plan in place. Because if I came to your business today and I said, what happens if you don't know what the steps are, when there is an event, when there is a disaster, you don't know what the steps are, you don't know what servers or what data needs to be where, what needs to be turned on first, and then that. If you don't have that in place, you just delay and create downtime. The organization will be off for much longer time than it could have been because you had a specific plan in place. And I think those are three very key things, in my opinion.
Okay, Marianne.
Thank you. I would say the three things that I would just pick up right now is the live backups and the offsite backups, and then DRS servers, and also data storage. So DRS service is critical. The reason being, should something happen on premise where you are on site and you find that there's a fire and everything is burnt up, what do? So having DRS service is first price in that instant. The reason being, should the fire destroy everything within your environment, including your personal laptops, your entire data is backed up. And of course, at the same time, you can take your laptop, you can get a new laptop and you can plug in anywhere in the world, wherever you are, plug in and you're ready to work because you have DRS service where all your information is very nicely stored, and it's as though just going back into the office and working all over again. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I'm going to ask one last question. If it's okay, then I'm going to open it up to the floor and the virtual tuners. Sia, we spoke about this earlier on when I was introducing you, coming from a government background now, primitive for me, very primitive. I feel like they don't know anything or are not acknowledging the times that we're in. So what would you say are the critical items that I being a business or anyone joining us here should know about within the cyber security environment?
So I would say, coming from a number of public sector entities, there is a lot of activity within public sector entities whereby there is preparation, there is assessment, and there is sort of oversight in terms of potential risks that can basically be applicable to public sector environments. However, there is limitations that are there, purely being budget and availability of the different skill sets. For example, if you listen to what Ian has mentioned, there's a number of elements at play from a cybersecurity component, but you can't have one person knowing the skill sets on preparations and mitigation of all the various threats that are there. So there is then a need for a number of capable individuals that are subject matter experts on the different topics. But again, there is then the limitation of the budgeting component to allow the public sector entities to comprehensively assess the risk applicable to the environment, then to comprehensively plan for and implement the activities that need to be implemented to mitigate that specific risk. So as much as there's a lot of activity going on within the public sector entities in preparation for cyber threats, but there is limitations that are there from a resourcing perspective that prevents a myriad of activities that could actually be performed to further enhance the security within that environment.
Okay, so government is broke in that department, basically. So they're not an easy target because I haven't heard of government being hacked. But anyway, sir, would you like to add on to that question?
Yeah, we're having a look at the fact that most of the departments don't actually have a team to deal with a cyber threat. So you would need a marketing person to do the press release. You'd need a team leader. You'd need to have done all this stuff before and tested it. You know, you're going to have to say, what measures have we put in place? What steps for it? Can we do a recovery? Can we do a backup? And there's so much more when something happens, because when something happens, you've got to have structure to it. You've got to follow almost a script and say, this is the first thing that we do. This is the second thing. This is that. When something does happens like this, usually people aren't prepared for it. And that's one of the things that you need to do. Is you need to say, well, if the worst happens, are we prepared for this? Are we available? Do we know what our steps are? Is there someone really calm who's going to take control of the environment, walk us all through? You know, those sets of things, so that we can achieve a recovery against it. The other set of things as well is that how are we treating our data within the environments, that sort of things. When you're handing over data, I mean, I'm going to ask now, what happens when you hand over data to external audit? Do they give it back? Do they take it? Do they destroy it? We give stuff freely over quite comfortably. How do we know that that data is being kept safe? What have we got as a policy or procedure in place to deal with external vendors, external parties, those sets of things? Also lines up to Poppy, it lines up to several other things, but these are the little things we need to look at as well and tick boxes on.
Can I also just come in there?
Yeah.
So Steve actually mentioned Poppy or Papaya as a term, which is it's the Poppy Act, so it's the Protection of Private Information Act, and that came into effect in I think it was June last year, and it is fully active. So the information regulator has specific requirements in terms of these types of breaches and information breaches, and it is quite important in terms of the way you act if information is actually accessed, and it is something that the information regulator is quite strong on. So you may not know of breaches, but those of us that are in the IT sector do follow it, and we do know of breaches because there's actually a public announcement that needs to go out, and people that have had the information accessed are personally made aware of the information that has been accessed and what has been accessed, and people, I think that the companies do need to actually understand that you actually do need to know what data you're storing, for whom, why, where, and how you can clean it. And as a private individual, you have the right to ask for your data to be erased. So this is something that is quite critical in terms of your information and looking after your information. Papaya is here. And you know, as public and private entities, we do need to be looking after data. We do need to be protecting data. We do need to be knowing where it is stored, how it is stored, and we need to be securing it, because the Protection of Private Information Act is active. And as entities, if we're not protecting the data, we're not securing the data, we're at even more risk than we were before.
Interesting. I'm going to open it up to the floor if there are any questions, one or two. If there's anyone on Zoom as well, we can take those questions. Just as a side note, I just wanted to know, this is for anyone. I was thinking about this last night, and I was thinking, you know, this budgeting issue, whereby companies haven't been budgeting for this cyber security issues or cybercrime, is that not an incentive for this cyber attacks to actually happen? Because, like, for example, if your company takes up an insurance to protect yourself from such an act, and then somebody hacks you without an intent of, you know, doing something about it, but then discovers that, hey, this person is covered, you know, so they've got a couple of hundreds of millions of dollars or rands or whatnot let me go ahead and, exploit them or ransomware them. As I said, the cyber mafia vibes. So is that not an incentive, Ian?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a driver. I think if you look at it, you got to put your feet in like a criminal's position. Like you got to think of yourself as a
Like a mafia.
and it's part of my presentation. And it's like why they're actually doing it, because it makes sense. It's easy money. And one of those drivers or driving factors is the fact that there is POPI in place. They know that if they leak that company's information, there's going to be up to 10 million, rand fine or 10 years in jail. They know that. They put that over the customers, well, to the company's head, sorry. And they know that that person is going to break and pay. And it's the same in the US and in Europe. You're seeing insurance, cybersecurity insurance, and they know that even that payment is now covered by another entity. So it makes the payment process even easier. So they know that it's gonna happen eventually. They're gonna get the money. So it just makes sense. It's easy money for them.
That explains why government is not being hacked, guys. We don't have insurance money for this.
Can I respond a little to that?
Yeah.
If you guys want to do your own research, been some really interesting stories in terms of some private and public sector entities outside of South Africa that do have immutable backups and are able to recover instantly, respond and whose data was encrypted. All critical components to this conversation. So don't think that this is a good way to respond. Responding that they can actually run away in not a very polite way. So you can go and look their stories up, because I'm not going to tell you what they say. But there have been some really, really interesting historical stories where the hackers have not actually been. They've got data, but they can do absolutely nothing with the data. The organizations have recovered instantly because they had all of the things we've been talking about today in place. There was absolutely no impact on the organization. The data the criminals got, was totally unusable because it was encrypted. So they couldn't read it whatsoever. And the organizations just responded to the hackers, well, no, thank you. We're not going to pay. So, there is another side to that.
Okay. Going one more time for any questions. Okay. I think it is confirmed that we don't have any questions online. And of course, seems like our audience is very well happy with what they had to say. So on behalf of Dubai Trade Port Corporation, I'd like to thank our speakers today. A round of applause. Thank you so much. And of course, for you guys for being here, especially the guys joining us online. Thank you so much for spending time with us at this cybersecurity and ransomware mitigation event. It's a big shout out to the team, of course, from Dubai iConnect for being here and staging this amazing event. And like I said earlier on, all that's left to do now is to network, play some games, and of course, have that thing. I think it's a snack lunch. And I did say, if you're online, we're going to e-wallet you something. Lies. I kid. Nothing like that. Thank you so much and have an amazing day. Thank you.